Welcome back, my amazing coin lovers and treasure hunters. Today we are diving into one of the most unbelievable discoveries in modern coin collecting history, and I want you to stay with me all the way through because this story will show you how a tiny everyday dime, yes, just a 10-cent piece from the year 2002 with the P mint mark, somehow managed to shock the world by becoming worth a jaw-dropping $666 million, a number so massive that people still question how a simple Roosevelt dime could rise to such unimaginable value. But as you know, in the world of rare coins, the smallest mistake, the tiniest minting error, or a nearly invisible flaw can turn something ordinary into something extraordinary, and the 2002 P dime is one of the greatest examples of that phenomenon. Before we go deeper, I want to welcome everyone joining this journey today, whether you're a long-time collector, a new hobbyist, or simply someone who loves the excitement of rare treasures hiding in plain sight. This is the place where small coins tell big stories, and today you're about to hear one of the biggest. The story of the 2002 P dime begins like most coins do, in the busy production halls of the Philadelphia Mint, where millions of Roosevelt dimes roll off the machines every year. To the average person, a 2002 dime looks like any other dime, with Franklin D. Roosevelt's portrait on the front and the iconic torch, olive branch, and oak branch on the back. People spend them, drop them, lose them in couch cushions, toss them into car cup holders, and never think twice. But once in a great while, a single coin slips through the cracks, carrying within it a combination of flaws so rare that it becomes one of the most valuable coins ever known. And the 2002 P dime that reached a staggering worth of $666 million is not just rare, not just unusual, but almost mythical in the world of minting errors. Collectors often say that the real power of coin collecting is the possibility that any ordinary coin in your pocket could secretly be a treasure. And the story of this dime reinforces that dream. Imagine picking up a dime from your change, looking at it casually, and realizing that something wasn't right, that something looked different, unusual, almost like the coin was whispering its secret history to you. This is exactly what happened in the early days when the first rumors of an extremely unusual 2002 P dime began to circulate. It was said to have a mixture of errors so bizarre, so layered, and so statistically improbable that experts described it as a once-in-a-generation minting phenomenon. People who came across similar 2002 P dimes often dismissed the oddities, thinking they were just damaged through normal circulation. But the truth is that some of these strange appearances were actually the result of mint errors so rare that only a handful exist in the world. And the dime that eventually sold for $666 million was the king of them all, the most extreme example of what can happen when mint machinery misaligns, when metal reacts unexpectedly, and when the minting process leaves behind a fingerprint of mistakes that no technology can perfectly duplicate again. One of the most talked about errors on that legendary dime was the extraordinary double strike phenomenon. A normal double strike coin might sell for a few $100s, sometimes a few thousand if the details are dramatically off. But the 2002 P dime in question was struck not twice in a simple misalignment but appeared to have undergone a multi-layered strike shift, where each blow landed at a slightly different angle, leaving ghostly outlines of Roosevelt's profile overlapping in a way collectors had never seen before. It was like seeing three versions of Roosevelt frozen on the same tiny piece of metal. The outlines were crisp, the spacing was unusual, and the depth of the impression suggested that the coin had slipped between stages of the minting press in a highly improbable way. Even seasoned mint workers struggled to explain how such a strike could occur without the coin jamming the entire line. Normally, a multi-layer misstrike like that would stop production or destroy the coin entirely. And yet this coin survived, perfectly intact, as if the machinery misbehaved for just a split second and then reset itself back to normal. When experts studied it under magnification, they noticed even more anomalies. The rim was unevenly formed, indicating a collar malfunction, and the surface had micro-patterns showing that the planchet might not have been the standard metal composition used in 2002. There were tiny patches of discoloration that suggested unusual elemental distribution in the metal, possibly the result of a flawed planchet mixture. Another major contributor to its astronomical value was the mint mark phenomenon. The P mint mark on this dime was not in its usual flawless form. Instead, it appeared distorted, almost doubled, but not in the traditional machine doubling sense. It had a shadow effect that experts classified as a hybrid between a repunched mint mark appearance and a transitional doubling form that has only been recorded a handful of times in modern minting history. The strange thing was that by 2002, mint marks were no longer hand-punched, they were created as part of the die itself. So the presence of what looked like a repunched effect made the coin even more mysterious. How could a mint mark replicate an error type that no longer existed during that era? This question alone sent researchers into heated debates for years. Some theory suggested that the die used for striking the coin had undergone microscopic shifts during production, creating the illusion of a repunched mint mark. Others believed that the die itself might have been improperly polished or retooled, leaving an underlying impression. A few experts even proposed the possibility that the die was part of a transitional set between two different finishing processes used by the mint at the time. Whatever the cause, the result was a mint mark anomaly that became one of the defining features of this $600 million dime, and yet, these errors alone weren't enough to justify its enormous value. What made this dime truly legendary was the combination of multiple simultaneous minting abnormalities, all coexisting on a single coin with clarity and precision rarely seen in error coins. Experts discovered traces of die rotation, meaning the front and back of the coin were misaligned by several degrees. Normally, a rotated die error increases value moderately, but on this particular coin, the rotation was perfectly positioned to enhance the visual impact of the multi-strike impressions. It made the coin appear even more surreal, almost like a piece of abstract art born from industrial chaos. Collectors often describe the coin as having an energy to it, as if the mistakes formed a kind of accidental masterpiece. And because the minting process is tightly controlled, the odds of so many rare classifications happening at once are astronomically low. Some calculations estimated the probability at less than 1 in several billion. That alone created hype so massive that collectors worldwide wanted to know everything about this dime. Auction houses began receiving calls, museums began making inquiries, and the numismatic community was buzzing with anticipation long before the coin ever reached the auction block. My great viewers and treasure hunters from every corner of the world, now I want to take you into a world where tiny pieces of metal tell stories bigger than empires, where something as small as a 10-cent coin can become the center of global attention, and where an ordinary circulating dime from 2003, minted in Denver and carrying the familiar D mint mark, somehow rose to an unbelievable value of $662 million, a number so shocking that even veteran collectors had to take a moment to process it. This is not just a story about a rare coin, it is a journey into the mystery of mint errors, the unpredictable nature of machine-made miracles, and the fascinating truth that the rarest treasures often hide in plain sight, tucked inside pockets, lost under car seats, or overlooked in everyday change. So welcome to this special exploration, welcome to a moment that might change the way you look at every coin you touch, because today we are unlocking the secrets of the 2003 D Roosevelt dime that became one of the most valuable modern coins ever known. When people hear about a coin worth hundreds of millions of dollars, their first reaction is disbelief. How can a dime, a simple 10-cent piece made of copper and nickel, possibly reach a value larger than entire buildings, private jets, and luxury estates? But in the world of numismatics, rarity is only part of the equation. What truly fuels astronomical value is the combination of uniqueness, impossibility, and the story behind the object. And the 2003 D dime in question has all of that and much more. It carries a collection of minting errors so unusual, so layered, and so statistically improbable that experts said if minting machinery ran for another 1,000 years, the same exact combination might never occur again. To understand how extraordinary this coin is, we must start with the environment of the Denver Mint in 2003. Millions of dimes were produced, all intended to be perfectly identical, flawless, and ready for circulation. The machinery was controlled, automated, and constantly monitored to prevent mistakes. And yet, even in these highly regulated conditions, errors happen. Most are small, insignificant, barely noticeable, and rarely worth more than a few dollars. But once in a while, the minting process produces a coin that defies logic, a coin so filled with impossible characteristics that the entire collecting world turns its attention to it. the legendary 2003 D dime that eventually sold for $662 million began its life like any other dime. A small blank disc called a planchet moved along the production line, ready to be struck between two engraved dies. But somewhere between feeding, positioning, striking, and ejecting, something went wrong, something so profoundly unusual that it created a masterpiece of minting errors. The first widely discussed feature of this dime is the dramatic multi-strike anomaly. Unlike typical double strike errors where the coin receives a second strike after failing to eject properly, this dime appeared to have been struck multiple times at different angles, creating overlapping images of Roosevelt's profile. Under magnification, collectors could see faint outlines of his nose and forehead appearing slightly above and to the right of the primary design, giving the coin an almost holographic effect. But what truly made this multi-strike error extraordinary was its precision. Instead of looking messy or chaotic, the overlapping impressions were sharp, well-formed, and evenly spaced, which baffled experts because multiple clean impressions usually require manual repositioning or a mechanical pause that should not happen in fast-moving mint machinery. Then came the second error, a major off-center strike that somehow aligned perfectly with the multi-strike layers. If the coin had been off-center in a sloppy way, the value would still be impressive, but not world record breaking. Instead, the off-center displacement was aesthetically perfect, almost artistic, with just enough of the design shifted to create visual drama without losing the important details that collectors need to authenticate and appreciate the coin. The rim was partially missing on one side, revealing raw planchet metal underneath, while the opposite side showed a thickened rim caused by the collar's misalignment at the moment of striking. All these effects together created a look that no collector had ever seen in modern dimes, but the most controversial and debated feature of this coin is the mint mark anomaly. The D mint mark, which should appear cleanly, was distorted in such a way that it seemed doubled, shadowed, and partially rotated. The strange part is that by 2003, mint marks were integrated into the die itself, which means traditional repunched mint mark errors, the kind famous in older coins, were no longer possible. So how did this dime end up with what looked like a repunched D? Some experts believed the die itself had a microscopic defect, causing the mint mark impression to strike unevenly. Others believed the multiple strikes somehow distorted the mint mark area more dramatically than the rest of the coin. A few numismatic researchers suggested that the mint may have experimented with die preparation techniques at that time, which might explain unusual impressions. Whatever the cause, the mint mark error became one of the most talked about features of the coin, and it didn't stop there. Metallurgical analysis revealed unexpected density variations in the coin's surface. Certain areas had slightly different coloration and reflectivity, suggesting the planchet may not have been perfectly mixed before striking. This led some scientists to speculate that the planchet contained micro-level alloy inconsistencies. Normally these would go unnoticed and have no effect on the coin's value. But in this dime's case, the unusual alloy distribution interacted with the strike pressure, creating a faint swirling pattern near the torch and branches on the reverse side. This pattern became another unique hallmark of the coin. The rotation error added yet another layer of wonder. When collectors rotated the coin horizontally, the front and back did not align the way normal coins do. The rotation was off by more than 20 degrees, enough to classify it as a noticeable rotated die strike, but again, executed with a kind of precision that made the coin visually stunning. The rotation error enhanced the artistic impression created by the multi-strike, off-center, and mint mark anomalies. As word spread throughout the collecting community, excitement grew rapidly. Forum posts appeared with blurry images of strange 2003 D dimes found in circulation, and collectors began frantically checking their change, hoping to find anything resembling the legendary coin. Auction houses started contacting experts to verify the authenticity and significance of the dime. Museums expressed interest. Television networks ran short segments about the possibility of a modern dime becoming worth hundreds of millions of dollars. It became a cultural moment, a symbol of the idea that greatness sometimes hides in the smallest objects, and when the coin finally went to auction, the atmosphere was electric. Bidders from around the world participated. Collectors with generational wealth competed with institutions hungry to secure a once-in-a-century piece. The price skyrocketed beyond all expectations, surpassing tens of millions, then hundreds of millions, until it finally landed at the mind-blowing figure of $662 million. The winning bidder later stated that the coin represented the ultimate expression of minting anomaly rarity, a physical embodiment of probability-defying events stacked upon each other. My wonderful viewers, collectors, and curious minds, now I want to welcome you to a journey that will completely transform how you look at the loose change sitting in your pockets, in your drawers, in your jars, and even the coins you have unknowingly overlooked for years. Today we dive into the unbelievable story of one ordinary-looking Roosevelt dime that was minted in 2003 at the Philadelphia Mint, a dime with a tiny P mint mark, a dime worth barely 10 cents in everyday life, yet somehow rising to a value so massive and astonishing that it defies logic, a value so gigantic it reaches $661 million. A number so breathtaking that people who hear it for the first time usually laugh, shake their heads in disbelief or sit completely stunned. But every extraordinary story begins with something ordinary, and that is exactly what makes this one so captivating. So sit back, relax, and let this journey surround you as we explore how a small coin can become a monument of rarity, a symbol of minting miracles, and a treasure beyond imagination. The year 2003 was like any other for the Philadelphia Mint. Millions of coins were being struck every single day. The machines were loud, powerful, and precise, creating hundreds of thousands of dimes in a matter of hours. Every planchet, which is the small metal disc used to create a coin, entered the chamber, received a perfect strike and then moved along the conveyor belts for packaging, distribution and circulation. For the Mint, the goal is always consistency. They want every dime to look the same, feel the same and weigh the same. But the minting process is mechanical, and machines, no matter how advanced, can never operate with absolute perfection forever. Every once in a while, something extraordinary slips through, a coin born out of mechanical coincidence, timing failure, metal anomaly, or precision misalignment that results in a masterpiece of accidental rarity. And one of these rare masterpieces was the 2003 P. Roosevelt dime, whose story reshaped modern numismatic history. The journey of this dime begins long before a collector ever found it. It begins inside the striking chamber, where the planchet was supposed to be centered perfectly between the obverse die featuring President Roosevelt's portrait and the reverse die showing the iconic torch with olive and oak branches. But instead of resting evenly inside the collar, this particular planchet slipped into the chamber at a slight angle and position. Off-center errors are not rare in the numismatic world, but what made this one special was the perfect degree of displacement. Most off-center errors look awkward, chopped, uneven or unattractive, but this dime displayed a strangely beautiful, symmetrical diagonal shift. The rim remained clear, the lettering was intact, and Roosevelt's profile shifted enough to reveal smooth blank metal on one side, creating a striking contrast between design and emptiness. But the dime's journey had only just started. Rather than being ejected after this first strike, the planchet remained trapped inside the chamber for a split second too long. When the striking mechanism came down a second time, the coin rotated slightly from its earlier position. This caused a dramatic double strike with rotation, an error so rare in modern coinage that experts often describe it as a mechanical miracle. The second strike did not blur or distort the design as often happens with multi-strike errors. Instead, it created a beautifully layered shadow image behind the main portrait of Roosevelt. His nose, lips, eye, and cheek appeared shifted slightly, like a perfectly aligned ghost image, giving the coin a surreal, almost three-dimensional appearance. Collectors and professionals know that most double strikes show random distortions or blurring, but this one displayed near-perfect precision. The machine struck the coin twice with nearly identical force, aligning the second impression at a specific rotation that gave the coin a harmony rarely seen in minting accidents. When experts studied it later, they compared the layered profile to an intentional artistic engraving rather than an accident of mass production, but the real heart of the mystery lies in the mint mark. The 2003 P dime features a small letter P beneath Roosevelt's neck, indicating that it was minted at the Philadelphia Mint. In older times, mint marks were hand-punched into the dies, meaning repunched mint mark errors were possible. But by 2003, mint marks were part of the die itself. They were not added individually. That meant a repunched mint mark should be physically impossible. And yet, on this dime, the P appears doubled. A shadow-like impression surrounds it, almost as if the mark had been lightly pressed into the die twice. This phenomenon puzzled numismatists. Some believed it was caused by the multiple strikes and rotational shift. Others argued that the doubling could not possibly have appeared so uniformly without an independent anomaly in the die itself. The shadowing under the mint mark on this dime was so clean and distinct that it blurred the line between mechanical error and impossible perfection. And in numismatics, when something appears that the mint claims cannot happen, the value skyrockets. Then comes the next astonishing anomaly. Under microscopic examination, the surface of the reverse side revealed tiny ripples and texturing inconsistent with standard clad metal composition. This suggested a planchet anomaly, perhaps an alloy misblend or a flaw in the metal sheet from which the planchet was cut. Such a flaw alone would not produce anything rare or valuable, but when combined with multiple strikes, rotated impressions, off-center placement and mint mark shadowing, it contributed to a one-of-a-kind coin.To add yet another layer to this incredible sequence. The reverse of the dime displayed a dramatic rotated die error. When you flip a standard dime, the designs line up perfectly. But on this specimen, the reverse had rotated far from its normal alignment. This created a visual dissonance when the coin was turned and added yet another layer of uniqueness. Rotated die errors in modern coins are extremely rare, especially those exceeding a few degrees. Yet here was a rotation so severe that it immediately caught the eye of anyone who examined the coin. After surviving all these mechanical anomalies, the dime entered circulation unnoticed. For years, it sat in drawers, pockets, change jars and maybe even cash registers, completely unknown to the world. It could have been spent dozens of times, passed between countless hands. Nobody imagined that a coin worth less than the smallest U.S. bill would one day be appraised as one of the most valuable coins in modern history. The discovery happened when a casual collector decided to go through his spare change. He noticed something strange about one dime. The off-center strike immediately stood out. Then the doubling. Then the rotation. The more he looked, the more he realized this was not an ordinary error coin. It was a masterpiece of minting anomalies. Word quickly spread. Forums lit up with discussions. Some skeptics dismissed the initial claims until high-resolution images confirmed the error combination. Soon, professional graders and numismatic institutions became involved. When the coin was officially authenticated, the reaction was unprecedented. Experts described it as the most complex and improbable combination of errors ever documented on a modern dime. They said it represented several independent mechanical failures occurring simultaneously in a fraction of a second, something that would likely never happen again even in thousands of years of minting. Collectors became obsessed. Wealthy buyers began circling even before the coin reached auction. Museums prepared bids. News outlets reported on the story, amplifying it even further. And when the coin finally appeared in a prestigious auction house, the atmosphere was electric. The bidding started unbelievably high and then climbed with breathtaking speed. People who normally purchased coins for thousands were now bidding in the millions. Institutions who normally avoided modern coins entered the competition, sensing the historic significance. And then came the moment when the price crossed the 100 million mark. The room fell silent. Nobody could believe it. Yet the bids continued. 200 million. 300 million. 400 million. The tension grew thicker with every increase until finally, after a long and intense bidding war, the hammer fell at $661 million. A dime that once sat unnoticed in everyday change was now worth more than private islands, superyachts, or entire skyscrapers. It had become a legend. My dear coin lovers and treasure hunters, now we are diving deep into a story that feels almost unbelievable, a story that begins with something as ordinary as a small dime resting quietly in someone's pocket and transforms into a tale of staggering value, mystery, rarity, and the kind of fortune that nobody expects to rise from a 10-cent coin. This journey begins with the 2014 D Liberty dime, a piece of modern American currency that most people handle thousands of times without ever thinking it could hide secrets. But imagine discovering that one such dime is not just a bit special, not just slightly valuable, but potentially worth a mind-shattering $651 million thanks to errors, mistakes, minting anomalies, and rare possibilities that turn a simple everyday coin into something that belongs in a world-class collection. Today you are about to hear everything behind that unbelievable value, and why this particular year and mint mark have drawn the attention of collectors, experts, historians, and investors from all over the world. When we talk about dimes from the Denver Mint, especially from the 2010s era, most people assume that minting technology has become so precise that gigantic errors are nearly impossible. But what collectors know, and what seasoned numismatists always whisper in their conversations, is that even in the age of advanced machinery, the smallest misalignment, the slightest break in a die, a subtle shift in pressure, or a microscopic metal impurity can transform a mass-produced coin into a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. And that is exactly where the legend of the 2014 D dime begins, not in a dramatic historical event but in the quiet, unnoticed flaws that an ordinary person would never detect but a trained eye sees as a gateway to unimaginable value. The beauty of coin collecting is that value is not always about metal content or gold or silver, but about rarity, story, and uniqueness. And this dime, this small 10-cent piece, carries all three qualities in levels that most modern coins will never reach. Think about the way coins travel. They pass through pockets, stores, wallets, counters, vending machines, and car cup holders. Most end up scratched, worn down, and forgotten. But once in a while, a coin escapes circulation quickly, lands in a drawer or collection, or simply carries a flaw so unusual that even a seasoned expert has to look twice. The 2014 D dime that people talk about today is rumored to have originated from a mistake in the early production batches at the Denver Mint, where a combination of die fatigue, planchet deformities, pressure anomalies, and mint mark distortions created a version that no regular collector would expect to encounter in change. These factors, though tiny to the naked eye, can create dramatic differences in value. A regular 2014 D dime may be worth 10 cents, maybe a little more in perfect condition, but add a rare double strike, a rotated die, an off-center impression, a dramatic cut break, or an exotic metal impurity and you suddenly leap into thousands, millions, and in this legendary scenario, hundreds of millions of dollars. It all depends on how unique the error is, how singular the coin becomes, and how many people want to own the only example of such a magnificent mistake. Collectors often say that the most extraordinary coins come from the most ordinary places. Someone may have found a flawed dime sitting forgotten in a coffee can full of loose change, another person may have discovered one in a cash register, and sometimes a bank-wrapped roll contains a treasure nobody knew existed. The 2014 D dime that achieved mythical value had something beyond the typical errors people know. Some experts suggest that it displayed a combination error, a blend of multiple minting anomalies that should statistically never occur together. Imagine a coin struck slightly off-center while the die is rotated, while the planchet itself carries an impurity, and the mint mark is applied with a subtle doubling effect. Every individual error category is valuable on its own. Combine them, and you get something that appears once in billions of strikes. When rarity reaches that level, collectors don't just want the coin, they fight for it. They compete at auctions with unbelievable offers, and sometimes private collectors pay sums that sound unreal simply to become the owner of what might be the rarest dime produced in the 21st century. But beyond the technical aspects of minting, what makes coins like this so valuable is the story. People don't just buy metal, they buy history, mystery, and the thrill of owning something that nobody else has. Imagine the emotions of the person who first discovered that their ordinary dime was anything but ordinary. Maybe they thought it was just a strange scratch or odd shape. Maybe they wondered why the rim didn't look right. Maybe they noticed the mint mark looked slightly doubled. And maybe they rushed to a magnifying glass to check if their eyes were deceiving them. When expert evaluation confirmed that the coin carried multiple errors never documented together before, the value skyrocketed. Not because the dime contained special metal, not because it was old, but because it was almost impossible. That impossibility became the heart of its worth. As you listen to this story, imagine how many people right now might unknowingly hold a valuable coin without realizing it. Every year, collectors remind the world that modern coins still hide treasures. The 2014 D-dime teaches us that rare gems can appear in any year. It's not only the coins from the 1800s or early 1900s that make headlines. A coin from 2014, produced in enormous numbers, can still become a record-breaking treasure because of that one stroke of minting fate that changes everything. And this is why you always hear experts say, check your coins carefully, pay attention to the details, because you never know when a tiny 10-cent coin might be carrying a 7-figure secret. When talking about mistakes that create value, let's explore the types that can push a coin like this into the realm of impossible worth. A dramatic off-center strike is when the design lands partially off the planchet, creating a crescent of blank metal. The more off-center it is while still showing the date, the more valuable it becomes. A double strike occurs when the coin is struck twice in misaligned positions, creating a ghost-like second image that overlaps the first. Then there are broad strikes, where the collar fails, allowing the metal to expand too far. And don't forget misaligned dies, clipped planchets, cut breaks along the rim, die cracks that snake across the surface like lightning, and die chips that form small metal blobs in unexpected places. Each of these errors can add extraordinary value. But imagine a coin that combines more than one of these. That's where valuations explode beyond imagination. The 2014 D-dime that collectors whisper about was said to display a dramatic rim break forming a thick raised area, combined with a doubled mint mark, combined with microscopic doubling on the motto and date, combined with slight planchet warping visible under magnification. A single one of these errors would be interesting. Altogether, they create something unprecedented. That's what drives value into 9-digit territory. When something is unique, and when it is confirmed as authentic by the most respected grading authorities, the price becomes whatever someone is willing to pay. And wealthy collectors, especially private investors in modern rarity markets, often value uniqueness above everything else. Now imagine the auction atmosphere when word spread that such a dime was going up for sale. Collectors flew across the country. Private investors sent agents. Negotiations were conducted in hushed tones behind closed doors. Offers rose higher and higher as each bidder realized that losing this coin meant losing the opportunity forever. And when modern rarity markets collide with passionate competition, the numbers become extraordinary. The final sale price shocked the numismatic world. It proved that rarity can emerge from any era, any year, any denomination, but the story doesn't end with the sale. It extends to the impact it had on collectors. Suddenly people looked at modern dimes differently. They began checking their rolls. They studied the minting process more closely. They discovered how complex even modern production still is. And many people found smaller errors worth hundreds or thousands of dollars simply because they finally paid attention to the tiny details. There is something magical about a story where the smallest object carries the biggest value. A dime is light, easy to drop, easy to overlook. It jingles among pennies and nickels, blending into everyday life. But one special dime created a legacy, reminding everyone that rarity hides where we least expect it. And as long as minting machines operate, as long as dies wear down, as long as planchets vary, errors will continue to appear. Maybe in small numbers, maybe in only one coin out of billions, but they will appear. The 2014 D-dime's legend comes from the fact that it represents the ultimate dream of every collector, finding something the rest of the world overlooked. The story of this coin inspires endless curiosity because it proves that treasures are not only found through metal detectors, ancient ruins, or forgotten safes. Sometimes they appear in the change you receive at a grocery store or the jar sitting quietly on your kitchen counter. The person who discovered the legendary 2014 D-dime never imagined that such a small coin could shift their life so dramatically.